He raised it like a child, fed it, played with it, trusted it with his life. But in a single silent moment, the tiger turned. No roar, no warning, just instinct and blood. Charles Chuck Mock wasn't just a man with a wild dream. He was a 67-year-old sanctuary owner who believed love could tame nature. And for years, it seemed like he was right, until one morning, his tiger, the same animal he'd raised since it was a cub, attacked without hesitation, killing him inside the very cage he once called safe. Why would a tiger suddenly maul the person who cared for it more than anyone else? Was it a freak accident? Or something everyone else saw coming, except Chuck? This isn't just a story about a man and a beast. It's about trust, denial, and the fatal cost of loving something that was never meant to be tamed. Stay with us as we uncover what really happened inside the gates of Lost Creek Animal Sanctuary, and why the truth behind Chuck Mock's death is more terrifying than anyone imagined. Charles Chuck Mock wasn't a reckless thrill-seeker or eccentric showman. He was a soft-spoken man with silver hair and a quiet presence, living in the windswept plains of Grant County, Oklahoma. To those who knew him, Chuck was kind, thoughtful, and a little mysterious. But behind that calm, gentle exterior lived a lifelong obsession that shaped everything he did. A love for big cats. From a young age, Chuck was drawn to the creatures most people feared. He didn't see killers. He saw misunderstood spirits, powerful, beautiful animals trapped by human misconceptions. That belief guided his life, and eventually it led him to build Lost Creek Animal Sanctuary. It wasn't a business. It wasn't for tourism or profit. It was personal. A quiet patch of land filled with lions, cougars, and tigers, most rescued from neglect, abuse, or abandonment. Chuck didn't hire staff. He didn't ask for help. He did it all himself. The feeding, the cleaning, the repairs, the routines. He knew every animal by name. He'd often sit inside their enclosures for hours, not just working, but existing with them. He believed in connection, that wild animals could bond with humans through time and trust. He wasn't careless. One neighbor recalled, he treated those animals like family. And for Chuck, that's exactly what they were. Not exhibits, not threats, but family. But the wild doesn't forget. Chuck's unwavering belief in the power of love and routine made him feel safe, maybe to safety, because when you treat a predator like a companion, even a moment of misjudgment can be fatal, and the thing you cherish most might be the one that ends you. Lost Creek Animal Sanctuary wasn't a polished zoo. It wasn't marked on tourist maps or promoted online. It sat at the end of a gravel road, tucked deep within the plains of Grant County, Oklahoma, surrounded by rustling wheat fields and miles of unbroken sky. It felt completely removed from the world. From the outside, it looked like any quiet homestead, a scattering of barns, makeshift fencing, and weather-worn structures. But behind those fences were apex predators, lions, cougars, and Bengal tigers, animals that most people only saw from behind reinforced glass, or never saw at all. Chuck had taken in the animals no one else wanted. Some came from bankrupt roadside zoos. Others were surrendered by overwhelmed private owners. To him, they weren't dangerous. They were displaced. He built the enclosures himself, with chain-link fencing and wooden supports, functional but far from fail-proof. There were no observation towers, no tranquilizer protocols, no trained backup, just Chuck and his belief that love and routine could replace regulation. By 2009, Oklahoma required little in terms of oversight. There were no mandatory federal inspections unless the animals were publicly displayed. Lost Creek operated in a legal gray zone, invisible to most authorities. Locals respected Chuck, but feared. What might happen if something ever went wrong? He never asked for help, one neighbor said. And if he ever needed it, nobody would get there in time. The sanctuary gave Chuck peace, but it also isolated him completely, miles from emergency services, surrounded by predators. It was a calm, fragile balance, and it only needed one crack to collapse. That crack appeared on October 29th, 2009, when the sanctuary's silence was broken by instinct. And blood, to Chuck Mock, the tiger wasn't just an animal. It was a friend, a companion, a creature he raised from a bottle, cradled like a baby, and trusted with his life. The tiger, a full-grown Bengal male, weighing over 500 pounds, had been with Chuck since it was just weeks old. He cleaned its enclosure daily, played with it, spoke to it as if it understood every word. To Chuck, it wasn't a predator. It was family. There were no recorded incidents, no complaints. Locals who occasionally helped at the sanctuary described the tiger as calm, docile, even friendly. But wildlife experts would say otherwise, because the truth is, no tiger is ever tame. Tigers, even those raised in captivity, are apex predators. They don't forget what they are, and they don't evolve into pets, no matter how long you feed them by hand. According to the USDA and countless animal behaviorists, tigers remain wired by instinct. A change in weather, a missed feeding, a new smell. Anything can trigger a predatory response, even with years of routine. The right trigger can surface without warning. Chuck believed he had earned the tiger's trust, but what he had, in truth, was familiarity, not safety. And familiarity can be the most dangerous illusion of all. There were no reinforced gates, no safety barriers, no tranquilizers nearby. Just Chuck and a tiger whose instincts, after years of dormancy, would return in a moment of silence. And when they did, there would be no second chances. October 29th, 2009 started like any other day at Lost Creek Animal Sanctuary. The sun was up early over Grant County, casting long golden shadows across the flat landscape. The wind was soft, the fields were quiet. It was, in every way, an ordinary morning. Chuck Mock followed his usual routine. He walked the perimeter with his clipboard and coffee, checking locks, inspecting fences, whispering greetings to the animals he knew by heart. By 8 a.m., he had already cleaned the lion's pen and dropped meat for the cougars. And then he reached the tiger. The big cat was pacing. Alert Tuck didn't hesitate. He approached the enclosure like he always did, alone. There was no staff, no emergency backup, no safety lockout. He opened the gate, carrying a food pail in one hand and a rake in the other. He stepped inside the cage, just as he had hundreds of times before. But that morning, something shifted. Maybe it was the smell of blood. Maybe the tiger sensed something different in Chuck's movements. Or maybe instinct simply surfaced. The attack happened in seconds. As Chuck turned his back, the tiger lunged silently, brutally. Its jaws clamped down on Chuck's neck and shoulder, dragging him to the ground. The rake clattered against the floor. Chuck didn't scream. He couldn't. The tiger bit again, crushing ribs, tearing muscle. His body was still limp, silent. Around 10 a.m., a relative came to check on him. What they found inside the enclosure was a nightmare. Chuck's body, bloodied, torn, and lifeless. The tiger, calm, watching, waiting by the time help arrived. Chuck Mock was already gone. News of Chuck Mock's death spread through Grant County like wildfire. People didn't just hear about it, they felt it. In a town where everyone knew everyone. The man who raised tigers had become a legend, and now he was gone. Neighbors gathered outside the sanctuary, some in silence, others in tears. They stared at the chain-linked fences, the empty cages, the field where Chuck once walked every morning. He loved those animals more than anything, one woman told reporters. It's hard to believe it ended like this. The Grant County Sheriff's Office sealed off the area. The tiger, still inside the enclosure, was tranquilized and later euthanized. Authorities had no choice. A tiger that kills its handler can never be trusted again. The sanctuary was shut down that same day. No more feedings, no more routines, just silence and the soft churn of official vehicles, leaving tracks in the dirt. For those who knew Chuck, the grief was deep and complicated. He died doing what he loved, but he also died because of it. His story wasn't just tragic, it was a warning. Chuck Mock's death didn't just make headlines, it ignited a firestorm. Animal welfare groups seized on the tragedy. To demand action, they pointed to Lost Creek as the cautionary tale. A man with no staff, no tranquilizers, and a tiger in his backyard. A sanctuary run on passion, not policy. In 2009, Oklahoma, like many states, had few laws restricting exotic animal ownership. A USDA license and minimal paperwork were all it took. There were no required inspections, no enforced safety standards, no emergency oversight. Chuck wasn't breaking the law. That was the problem. Across the country, stories like his had begun piling up. Owners injured, mauled, or killed by the animals they thought they knew. In 2011, just 2 years later, Ohio would face its own horror when dozens of wild animals were released by a private owner before he took his own life. That incident finally forced Congress to act, but Chuck's death was already a warning shot, one we failed to hear in time, because when you allow apex predators into private cages without oversight, it's not a matter of if something goes wrong, it's when.